Yo, Skid, what's up everybody, man? Y'all know who I be. It's your man Pooh, CYGG. Now today we're going to be ranking all the prototypes from worst to best. So man, like I said before, man, make sure you guys hit a like on this video if you will. If you enjoy this video, it helps me to make more videos like this. And also don't be afraid to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Now if you guys looking at my dude like, oh my god, why he looks crazy like that, as well as my battery. Now the reason why I went with this fit because I like the two-tone look, man. It looks blue on one side and then it's orange on the other, and then when when you get in the game, it looks dope. So I just like it for that reason. No, it's not a whole Miami fit. It's just what I just put together on this character. It's not the whole thing you get from playing the Miami Deport. But anyways, let's start with number 13. Now, at the top of the list, or in this case, at the bottom of the list, is the MANIMAL prototype. The reason why, because this is by far the second slowest prototype on the game. And it really, the maximum security X factor doesn't do it any justice, to be honest with you. It could be a good prototype depending on how you want to maneuver it and stuff like that. But in actuality, man, it's way slower than the finesse. It's the second slowest prototype on the game. And me personally, I would prefer you just choose any other prototype to catch the ball over this prototype in general. And that's just my point with that. And that's why I have MANIMAL starting off the list at number 13. Number 12, Brick Wall. Now the reason why I chose to put Brick Wall at number 12 is because it is the third slowest prototype on the game. And when you're dealing with, a video game where you got to play both sides of the ball and you got to account for, other people actually shooting prototypes that actually has speed, you have to be able to move around. Now the only thing that makes this prototype even worth grinding to a certain extent is the fact that it has the enforcer ability. But other than that, you can add the enforcer ability to the jacked up prototype and it does everything that the Brick Wall can do except way better. So in this case, I don't even consider this this is probably the worst defensive prototypes out of all the prototypes, and there are only 4 defensive prototypes. So with that being said, it falls at number 12. Number 11, Golden Arm. Now the reason why I put Golden Arm at number 11 is set up because it's more useful than the other 2 prototypes, because it's a quarterback prototype and it is the most accurate prototype on the game when it comes to passing the football, but it's not the best quarterback prototype out of all the 3 other prototypes, in my opinion. And not only that, but it is the slowest prototype on the game. So why would you want to have someone that slow being on defense, or even having to try to scramble away from pressure on offense? That puts you and your team in a bind, especially when you're a quarterback, and the quarterback has to play the safety position. So anybody can basically run past you with any other prototype. So with that being said, that's why I consider the Golden Arm to be at number 11. Number 10, the Blanket. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the Blanket is actually a decent prototype. It's in the top 10, even though there are only 13 prototypes. But even with that being said, it is a fairly decent prototype. It can force a lot of fumbles, especially if you put the enforcer prototype on it. The enforcer ability, excuse me, and then put lurk on it. You can have a fairly effective prototype with the Blanket. But in this case, I'm not gonna lie, the jacked up prototype can do just about the same things as the Blanket, except even better. And like I say, out of all the 4 defensive prototypes, this is the 3rd best defensive prototype, which is the reason why I would actually consider putting this prototype at number 10 and choosing the jacked up over it. Number 9, You Can't Guard. Now the You Can't Guard prototype, the reason why it's so low is because, even though it's a fairly good wide receiver prototype, there is another receiving prototype, or actually 2 that are actually better than the Can't Guard. I'm not gonna lie. And then another thing that doesn't do the Can't Guard justice is the maximum security X factor, because that's just me. I feel like the maximum security X factor is useless within this mode, and also the fact that this prototype is fairly not that good on defense. I've tried to tackle a lot of people on defense with this prototype, and it is lackluster. I'm not gonna lie to you. I feel like you can do way better, as well as defending and running with people. This is one of the slower wide receiver prototypes, so I would not choose this prototype, but it's in the top 10 because it is effective. So let's move on to the next one. Number 8, Jacked Up. Now, I'm not gonna lie, man, this is actually a good prototype. I mean, the things you want to do with the blanket and the hits that you would like to make, also with the avalanche prototype, you can do all of that with this prototype Jacked Up. It's faster than both of them, it tackles just as good, and it hits just as hard, especially once you get the enforcer ability on this, and you can get the lurker, you know what I'm saying, ability you added to it. Man, this is a great roaming safety prototype. It is great on defense. I'm not gonna lie, it has its moments on offense where it is not that good, really, man. It can get jammed up a lot, it can drop a lot of catches and stuff like that, but to be honest with you, it's still fairly a good defensive prototype to go after. It is the second best defensive prototype on the game. Number 7, ZEUS. Now, the ZEUS prototype is actually one of the most underrated prototypes on the game. Not many people use it, but trust me, man, this prototype is very effective. It can catch, it has a good amount of speed, it's faster than the Can't Guard Me, in my opinion. Maybe, it may be different from everybody else, but I wasn't even able to make some of the craziest catches that I made before until I actually played with this prototype. I did the cartwheel catch with it, I did some of the craziest catches with it, and I was able to moss people with this prototype. Not only that, but this prototype is actually effective on defense. It can hit like a linebacker, and it can tackle, man, and then on top of that, it has the ability to jump up and get those interceptions. Now, that's just me personally. That's just how I feel, because the rest of the list is basically going to be depending on how the rest of these builds are effective on both sides of the ball, because that's what you utilize them at, on both sides of the ball. And right there, man, I feel like the ZEUS is a good prototype to use, and that's why it's at number 7. Number 6, TRUZZ. Yes, the Lamar Jackson prototype doesn't make it into the top 5, but it's right outside of the top 5, simply because it's the most versatile build in the game. Now, is it the best quarterback? It's the second best quarterback, but at the same time, you know what? I'm gonna go as far as say it's not the second best. It's actually the third best quarterback, because they designed the prototype of Lamar Jackson to actually perform how they describe him in the media, and that's a skill position that can throw the ball. Now, Lamar Jackson isn't able to make the most accurate throws like the Golden Arm and the Buffalo, but it's able to make throws better than any other skill position on the game, because they basically made it like a running back that can throw the ball. That's the way they describe Lamar Jackson. Now, he's able to play defense, he's able to get tackles, he's able to catch the ball, he has great speed, but at the same time, at the quarterback position, I'm not going to sit right here and say as the quarterback it is the best passing one, because it is not. It's clearly not, and that's the only reason why I put it at number 6. But it is a very useful build, and that's why you catch so many people grinding this build out first and maxing it out first. Number 5, RACZILLA. Now, the reason why RACZILLA is in the top 5 is because it is one of the fastest prototypes on the game. Not only that, but it actually is hard to press this prototype. It can get open, it can get those moss catches and stuff like that. It can fly down the field, it can actually tackle on defense. It's a very versatile build, and you can run people over with it. Not saying you're going to be getting a lot of jukes with it, but you can pull off some spectacular plays with it. Not too many weaknesses with it. I pretty much like this build a lot, man. I feel like it's very useful, and that's the reason why I put it at number 5. Number 4, the Buffalo. Now, I did a video on the Buffalo, and I basically talked about how it is the most balanced prototype in the game, simply because it's so many things you can do. You can run, you're fast, but you're not super fast. You can run over people. You have good accuracy for a quarterback. You have the throw power to actually separate your offensive players away from defensive players in ways that the Golden Arm can't do, even though it's the most accurate. And you're able to make tackles, and you're able to hit hard on the defensive end. Even though you're not hitting harder than a linebacker, you are tackling harder than a cornerback, maybe somewhat on the level of a safety. Now that's the reason why I actually chose this build, because I mean, you got to understand, out of all the builds, this is probably the most balanced. Like literally, it's the most balanced prototype on the game, because you can do damn near everything. Even though you're not doing it greatly, you're doing it to a good extent, man, because you're so balanced. And that throw power on offense, if you have a fast cat or whatever receiver, you're gonna separate because it can sail the ball downfield. And that's why this one has the number 4 spot to me. Number 3, the Magician. Now, I did a video on this prototype as well. Now, this prototype is basically the most athletic prototype to me because it can do everything. It can cover, it can run the ball. Like anytime you put the ball in this prototype's hand, it can make some plays happen. You can run over people, you can juke people, you can catch the ball, you can get off the press with this build, and you can also make those spectacular catches, and you can also cover somewhat on defense. This build is actually decent. Like I'm not gonna say it's decent if it's in the top 3. It's a great build. I mean, it can also throw decently in the pocket, but the only thing that stops this build from being higher than the number 3 is that the fact that no one really knows how to basically, activate the X factor consistently. I only activated the X factor once, and I haven't been able to do it again. And that's the only thing that stops this build from actually being ranked higher. And that's the reason why I leave it at number 3. Number 2, Fast Cat. Now, I mean, it's only simple that, the Fast Cat reaches the number 2 spot. Now, it's a clear fighter for the number 1 spot, but the reason why I chose number 2 is because even though it's the fastest prototype on the game, and on offense, it can literally change the game if you give it too much open space, whether that's catching the ball or running the ball out of the backfield, or even short catches where it can, get yards after the catch. The only thing that kind of stops this build from being super dominant is the fact that sometimes it drops a lot of catches in traffic. And not only that, but it can be pressed a lot because it doesn't really have that wide receiver release. And that's the only thing that kind of stops this build from being number 1. But trust me, it is a difficult, it is a runner-up. I can tell you that it is a runner-up for the number 1 spot. But in my case, I don't really consider it a number 1. It is definitely a number 2, and it is close to number 1 in my opinion. But there is a build that I consider to be the number 1 prototype on the game. Number 1, the Lock. Now, the reason why I chose the Lock at number 1, man, you guys see me make a video on the Lock and talk about how effective the Lock is, especially if you guys know how to use it, especially with the lock-on system and everything as well. Basically, this build can take other prototypes out the game. Like if you're a wide receiver, it can technically take you out the game, and also it can press the Fast Cat and take the Fast Cat out the game. Now, I understand there are some people actually using the Fast Cat at quarterback, putting escape artists on it, making it a dominant passer and stuff like that. I mean, that's another versatile way to use the Fast Cat. But another problem where that happens is, what if you still have to pass the ball and that person has the lock on them and they know how to utilize the lock? The Fast Cat doesn't have the accuracy to get the ball past them, even though they have the speed to escape pressure. But even if that person is on the other side of the ball, they do not, even though they have the speed, they don't have the release to get off the lock. The Lock can also make plays on the offensive end. Man, it can speed past a lot of your slow defenders and just basically burn them deep, just like the Fast Cat can. It's basically a little bit of a lower speed Fast Cat with better coverage abilities and just as great abilities, except it can actually tackle and stuff like that, man. That's the reason why I chose the Lock at number 1, and I feel like it's the number 1 build. If you guys feel like I'm wrong, let me know what you think I went wrong at. If you guys feel like what build is number 1, put it down below. But this is my rankings of all the prototypes from worst to best, and the Lock gets the number 1 spot. But until next time, it's your man Pooh, CYGG, and I'm out.